Hi, my name is Dan. I'm the owner of Billy Gomer's Barbecue Sauce and a member of the TD team at Your Castle Real Estate. Today I'm going to be making a video about how to make competition style ribs. So they're a little bit different from, putting them in. We're not going to just put them in the oven. We're not going to put them in a crock pot. We're going to use a smoker, and I'm going to kind of go through the process that I go through when I put my ribs into a competition. Before we begin though, I just want to go over some things. So right now we're doing the video on the ribs. As time goes on, I'm going to start uploading more and more videos. I'm going to be doing a video on brisket, pulled pork, chicken, some poppers. So keep checking back to the website as I'll be putting more recipes up. I'm also going to be putting together some videos of types of smokers, different options that you can use for your smokers, how to smoke on a gas grill, how to trim all the different types of meat, how to pick out the proper type of meat, all that kind of stuff. But until I get those videos up, I'll have links on the website that tell you how to do all that stuff. So that's kind of the basics of just kind of getting started. So today, where we're at right now is I've got the ribs already trimmed up the way that I like them. This one was kind of a funky rib, so this one didn't get trimmed up very well. Usually I like them to be a lot cleaner. Kind of like you see here, there's just a little bit of fat on them, but for the most part I've got most of the fat off of them, and they're pretty uniform. That's the way that I like them to be. Okay, so now what we're going to do, now that I have them all trimmed up, and by the way, I got these ribs from Costco. If you're not sure where to get ribs from, I've tried them from I don't even know how many different places, and Costco, as far as I'm concerned, has the best ribs in town, so I always use Costco ribs. Alright, so today I'm actually going to use 3 different kinds of rubs, and the reason I'm doing 3 different rubs is because I'd like to demonstrate that, there is no one right way to do ribs. That's what makes it fun, that's what I enjoy about it. So I'm actually going to use 3 different types. So the first rub that I'm going to use is, I'm going to get a different glove here. The first rub that I'm going to use is just kind of like a homemade, let's pull some stuff out of the cabinet and throw some stuff on there, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some mustard, and I'm going to just put a nice little coating of mustard right on top here, and that's going to add a little bit of tanginess to the ribs, and it'll also allow the rub to stick on there. So you don't need a ton, just a little coating of it, okay? Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this stuff, it's called Freak Daddies, and all it is it's just salt, pepper, garlic powder, and onion powder. A buddy of mine makes this, so it's just a combination of some basic seasonings. So I'm going to start with that one first, give it a pretty healthy coating of it. So this will give us kind of our base flavor here, salt, pepper, garlic, onion, good stuff. Okay. Then I'm going to take some brown sugar and just sprinkle a little bit of brown sugar on top. Okay, just enough to give it some good sweetness here. Don't need a ton, we just want to make a little tiny crust, and really the best way to do it would probably be to actually mix them together in a bowl first and then kind of sprinkle it all over at once. Okay, I'm also going to add just a little bit of cinnamon. Once again, this probably would work a little bit better if you would just mix it all beforehand. Okay, some smoked paprika. That's key. You gotta have the paprika. Try it like this here. Okay, and then I like a little bit of spice, so I'm going to add just a little bit of cayenne pepper, just to give it a little bit of spice. And once again, you guys can put whatever you want on here. It's totally up to you. Okay? The second set of ribs, I'm actually going to use my rub that I really like to use, and all this is saltgrass 7 spice. You can get this, there's a saltgrass over in Aurora, you can get this right from the restaurant, or you can order it online. And then I mixed it with some turbinado sugar and a little bit extra smoked paprika. And I'm just going to get a really thick coating of this. Like I said, it works a lot better if you just mix everything together all at once, which is what I've done here. So I'm just going to get a nice heavy coating of this stuff on there. Okay. Alright. This last set of ribs, like I said, you know, it's one of the things that I love about ribs and barbecue in general is it gives you a lot of opportunity to get creative and do different things and just try stuff out and see how it works. So I actually was just going through my cupboard this morning thinking, you know, what could I put on that third rack? And I pulled out this prime rib rub that I got at Ace Hardware over off of University and right by Eastridge. They have a huge selection of rubs. It's a good place to check out. So anyway, I found this and I was like, you know what? It's a prime rib rub, but it has rib in the name, so I might as well give it a shot. So I'm just going to throw this on there and we'll just find out what it tastes like. I kind of have an idea of how it's going to work, but I'm about 50-50 as to whether or not it's going to be good. So, but like I said, that's part of the fun of barbecue. You get to play with stuff and just test it out. Alright, so now, as you can see, I've got 3 different racks of ribs with 3 totally different rubs on them, 3 totally different flavor profiles, and it really depends on what kind of flavor profile you want to go with, what kind of rub you're going to put on your ribs. I think all 3 of these are probably going to turn out just fine, so you know, as you start playing with this stuff and get better at it, just start playing with all sorts of different flavor profiles and see how it turns out. Now we've let our ribs sit in the fridge for a few hours to kind of take on the rub that we put in. You're welcome to leave them overnight if that's the way you like to do it. I prefer to just do it for a couple hours, and then I usually take them out about a half an hour before I throw them on the smoker, and that just allows them to get back up to room temperature before we put them on the smoker. You're also welcome to brine your ribs. I actually used to brine my ribs all the time, and kind of what I noticed over time was that when I brined them, they almost got kind of mushy at the end, and I just didn't like the texture of it. And for the amount of flavor that it imparted and everything else, I finally decided that I don't like brining. So I just stick with rubbing, and I usually do it a few hours before I put them on. But like I said, you can do it overnight if that's the way you'd like to do it. So now what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to put these on the smoker, and we're going to let them smoke for 3.5 hours at 225 degrees. And we'll go over the different types of woods that you can use in just a minute. So I'm going to go ahead and get these on the smoker. I got it all prepared, ready to go. I got it sitting at 225 already. Try and get them as close to the middle as I can because you're going to get the most even heat that way. You're going to get most of the heat coming up through the edges, so you want to keep them towards the middle. Alright, so that's it. So we're going to cover these up and we're going to let them sit for 3.5 hours at 225 degrees. Alright, so as you can see, we've got the smoker cooking here. We've got some wood down in the coals, which is creating the smoke, which is going to impart a lot of flavor onto our ribs. So let's talk a little bit about the types of wood that I've decided to use today. I've actually decided to use 4 different types of wood today. The first one that we have in there right now is going to be the pear wood, which is sitting right over here. We're also going to use some peach, some sassafras, excuse me, and some cherry. The reason that I've chosen these 4 woods today is because I really like the fruity woods. I like how they impart kind of a light, fruity flavor into the meat. It's a very subtle kind of flavor. So usually you have to supplement it with something, which is why I have the sassafras. It gives it a little bit of extra just a little bit of extra body, I guess, for lack of a better word. And usually when I do these fruity mixtures, I'll use a little bit of mesquite as well. Today I don't have any mesquite, so I'm not using it, but the mesquite kind of gives that normal smoky flavor that you might be accustomed to and used to. So I like to use a little bit of that, it just kind of gives, once again, a little bit more body to it. It's a really good idea if you want to start experimenting with woods to try individual woods all by themselves. So make a rack of ribs and use only pear. Next time use only peach. Next time use only cherry or apple or whatever. And then you start to get a feel for what the individual flavors of the woods are. Try one with hickory, with mesquite, whatever. So I've done that with all of these woods, so I kind of have an idea of what each of the different woods, what kind of flavor they impart. And these are just the ones that I tend to like the most. Now what we're going to do is, the ribs have been cooking for 3.5 hours, and we're ready to pull them off, and we're going to wrap them in foil, and then we're going to put them back on at the same temperature, 225, for another 2 hours on top of that, okay? So I'm going to show you how to get the foil prepared so that your ribs don't leak all over the place, okay? So the first thing is get the heavy-duty foil. So I've got the heavy-duty, you know, extra big size aluminum foil. That seems to work the best. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 3 pieces out, and I'm going to kind of measure by using the end of the table. So then I get the same size pieces every time. You want it to be just long enough to set your ribs on it and be able to curl up the end. So that's how long you're going for. So, you know, 18 to 24 inches, I would say. We're going to get 3 pieces. And we're just going to stack them up like this. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the first 2 pieces. I'm going to line up the edges of them. Okay, like that. And I'm going to make these into one big sheet by just folding this up here. I'm going to fold it over, and be careful not to cut your fingers. I've cut my fingers before. It's kind of like a nasty paper cut. So watch your fingers, especially on the first couple passes. And I'm going to do this about 6 to 8 times because you want to make a really good seal here. Because if you don't, when we take our ribs off and we put all the yummy stuff on top, which we'll do next, it'll all just leak out all over the place. Okay, so now we've got that done. Then what we're going to do is we can just open this up like this, and now we've got one big piece of foil. We're going to take our 3rd piece, and the reason we have a 3rd piece is because it's just going to help support the ribs once we put them on here. It's going to, if you don't add this 3rd piece on top here, there's a high likelihood that when you pick up your ribs and move them around, you're going to get a hole in the bottom of this foil, and it's going to drip all over the place. Ask my wife, I've gotten it all over the place before, and she's not super excited about it. So put this 3rd piece of foil down right here. It'll give you that extra little support that you need. We're about halfway through the cooking process now, and what I like to do about every half an hour during the initial cooking process is I like to spray them down with either Coke, Pepsi, Dr. Pepper, whatever you like. And the reason that I like to do that, some people will use vinegar, apple cider vinegar, some people will use fruit juices, some people won't spray them at all. I prefer to spray them, and I've used all of those, and I choose to use Coke, Pepsi, or Dr. Pepper. I don't really care which one. The reason that I use those is because they give it a nice flavor. They kind of create a little bit of caramelization on the top, and they just give a little bit of sweetness right when you first bite into the top of the rib. And I think it complements a lot of the other flavors that I have going on the ribs. So about every half an hour, I'll just spray them down until they get, you know, fairly wet. And then I'll let that caramelize on there and do it again. So you can see the ribs have been cooking for a few hours now. You can see they've got some pretty good color to them. And I'm just going to take this and I'm just going to spray it. I'm not going to drench them, but I'm going to get them pretty wet. I want to make sure that you get, you know, a nice coating on there. Just like that. Seal this back up and let it keep cooking, and in about another half an hour I'm going to come back out and do it again. Alright, so you guys have been patient now for 3.5 hours. Your ribs should be ready to come off the smoker, and so what we're going to do next is one of my favorite parts. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a glaze on the ribs. And so once we get started on this, you'll kind of see what I'm talking about. These are definitely not diet ribs. These are heavy duty, you know, coming at you, good stuff ribs, okay? These are competition style ribs. So if you're going on a diet anytime soon, maybe you should wait on the ribs until your diet's over. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and pull these things off of here, and just keep in mind the reason that we do the glaze, there's actually 2 reasons for it. Number one, it just adds a lot of flavor on the top. It puts a nice sheen on the ribs once you pull them off of the smoker, and before you serve them up. The other thing is it's going to create kind of a juice in the bottom of the foil after we wrap these that you can actually turn the whole slab over into and dip it right before you put them on your cutting board and slice them up. So it's kind of two reasons why we do that. So when we grab our ribs off of the smoker, what you're looking for right now is you want to be able to just barely get them to start to tear. So these ones are about right, okay? So what we're going to do, we're going to pull it over here. So right up on there, close our smoker up. All right. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to take some Parquet squeeze butter, and we're just going to lather this bad boy up with that. And we'll keep going. And a little bit more. Alright, there we go. We want, some people will even put more than that. We want to put lots and lots of gooey, yummy goodness on there. Next, we're going to take some brown sugar and just sprinkle that right over the top. Now you can play around with the order of these 3 things. I've done honey first, I've done brown sugar first, I've done butter first, and I haven't really found that one way works better than the other. Some people might have an opinion on that, but I personally don't. And then lastly, we're just going to drizzle some honey right over the top here. Like I said, barbecue is not about losing weight. Barbecue is about all sorts of yummy goodness. Alright, now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and wrap our ribs up. We want to try and keep the foil from touching the meat itself. So that's why we have such a big piece of foil. All we're going to do, bring these 2 edges to touch right in the middle. Roll it down a little bit. You want to get a nice tight seal on this because you don't want the gases to escape in there. We want to seal everything up good and tight. That's the whole objective here. Leave just a little pocket of air there, right in there. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take this, put it right back on the smoker, and we're going to keep it going for another 2 hours wrapped up in the foil, just like that. So that's it. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to pull these things off the smoker, we're going to wrap them in a towel, and then we're going to let them rest for another hour. Alright, so the ribs have been cooking now they've been in the foil now for 2 hours, and so now we're going to go ahead and pull them off, and we got to let them rest for another hour. So to do that, all we're going to do is we're just going to pull them right out of here. We're going to put them into an old towel or something like that you don't really use anymore. I have designated towels that are my barbecue towels. I'm just going to go ahead and wrap it up. And really all we're trying to do is just kind of keep it warm. And then you can either put it into a cooler, you could put it in your oven if that works for you, whatever. And all you're going to do is just let it sit for another hour, just like that. So now the ribs have rested for an hour in the towel, so I've taken them out of the cooler. And you can see that I ran out of my awesome stretchy plastic gloves, so now I'm stuck with these see-through ones, so I'm actually wearing gloves. Alright. So, look over here, open this up and kind of see what it's supposed to look like. This one I had to wrap foil around a couple times because it started leaking. I had to get kind of crazy with it. And I think the reason that it was leaking was because I pulled the foil up too steep on this side and it just poked a hole in the corner. Lord. There we go. Alright. So now you can see there's some juice in there. When you pick them up, they start to fall apart. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're just going to turn it over. Usually there's more juices than this, but this one, like I said, was leaking. Just like that. Let it drip off. Like I said, these are not diet ribs. It's the real deal. Alright, so now we got it over here. Well, where your best ribs are going to be really depends on how you cooked it. If it's undercooked, then your best ribs are going to be down here. If it's overcooked, your best ribs will be down here. I always like to just start in the middle. Oh, and before we slice it up, the last thing that we need to do, I always use Billy Gomer's Cherry Chipotle barbecue sauce when I do smoked meat like this, because it has a really smoky flavor and it just goes well with the meat. Now ideally what you would do is you'd let these ribs sit for about 5 minutes, just like this, and they'll kind of thicken up. But right now I'm just going to go ahead and cut it right now. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up the rack. I'm going to find the bone on each side. I'm going to put it on that point there. Find the bone over here. And then I'm going to do it in one stroke. Whoops. That was a bad cut. Let's try again. So the idea is to get nice even pieces. So these are kind of jacked up. Oh, yum. That's a perfect rib right there.
Can I have a try?
You can see that it pulls away from the bone, but for the most part it holds my teeth. It's not falling off the bone, but it's really soft, tender, and juicy. And the bone started to turn white right after I bit it. So that's a perfectly cooked rib. That's what you want.